Akshita, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel, or if you've subscribed to me, welcome back. Anyway, so today's video is about personal style. Now, this is a very close to heart topic of mine, also because I like reading about fashion and stuff, and this is a topic that I've been debating whether I should make a video on it. I really wanted to make a video on it, but then again, it's a very subjective sort of a topic, but I still want to talk about it from a lot of different POVs, okay? So, anyway, it's been a while since I have been trying to figure out what my personal style is, and to be very honest, I haven't been able to figure out yet. I'm working on it. But what I have been able to do is not try to buy as many clothes that I used to buy earlier. Now, I know this doesn't seem like a big deal, but given the kind of consumerism that we as a generation is facing, and just the shift in trends of how just fashion is being consumed, it's dangerous. We are right now going through what a term would be called as vibe session. Now, vibe session basically means a vibe session. It's an actual term, you can look it up. It basically means how the world and the governments and all of the top XYZ whatever people who hold all the position and the power in the world want us to feel that the economy is doing quite well, but deep down we all know we are going through shit. This economy is going through a recession. Nobody wants to say it out loud, but you know we are. We're going through a vibe session, and what makes it even worse in terms of fashion is how we are consuming it. Fast fashion has literally killed fashion and so many other aspects of it, and led to consumerism, and which in turn has led such a deeply ingrained behavior in just individuals, which has led us to become clones of each other. Literally clones. Okay, so I want to start this video by talking about how you want to look different from the rest, but at the end you still end up looking the same. If you were to walk on the street outside right now, you will find 10 people wearing the same aesthetic of, let's say, I don't know, let's pick cottagecore, okay? Cottagecore, but in different fonts. So in the process of trying to look different, you end up looking the same. What is personal style? Personal style is something that defines you. Now, personal style does not necessarily mean, okay, what clothing you're wearing, what shoes you're wearing. It could just mean how you will enhance your particular feature. For example, let me give you an example of Breakfast at Tiffany's. If you're someone who's watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, you know who Audrey Hepburn is. When you think of Audrey Hepburn, if you were to cover her face, you could still figure out and understand and just identify who she is just by the way her hair was, just by the way her makeup was done. Now you understand what personal style means, and that particular style stayed consistent with her throughout her journey. Consistency is the key of personal style. Steve Jobs, when you look at a black turtleneck and jeans, whether you like it or not, you will think that, oh, a black turtleneck and jeans, it would remind you of Steve Jobs. Whether you're thinking about him or not, that's a different thing. That's what personal style is. Personal style can equate to your clothes being a uniform where you wear the same thing every other day, like how Steve Jobs was, but I'll come to that later. So I want to talk about the rise of aesthetics and microtrends. Aesthetic is, let's say, a corpcore, where an office siren, a cottage core, a Barbie core, a whatever core, there are so many cores, I've lost count of it. Those are aesthetics. Then there are microtrends. Microtrends are a subset within aesthetics. For example, if you think of a clean girl aesthetic, within that you can think of a cottagecore clean girl. So cottagecore, even though it's a big aesthetic, you could think of ballet core, coastal cowgirl core, like there are so many. And what I'm trying to point out is, this is a dangerous machine that we are going through. Every single time I scroll Instagram, I am recommended a different aesthetic, and as a result of which I have been trying to safeguard myself from actually going and buying out those clothes, but there are people who will go out and buy that particular aesthetic, wear that for some time, and because of how good and how efficient and advanced fast fashion has become, a next aesthetic will pull up and the people will go and buy that again. This becomes a toxic cycle and a chain which has resulted into the death of personal style. People don't have a sense of identity anymore. People want to look different, like I mentioned, and yet you end up looking the exact same as those 10 people walking on the street. This is one of the downsides of consumerism and the death of personal style. The second thing I want to talk about is, do you think having a uniform is gonna solve your problem? Now, when I say uniform, I don't mean school uniforms and jazz. What I mean is wearing a similar thing over and over again. For example, again, a good example of this is Steve Jobs. A black turtleneck and jeans were literally his uniforms. The reason uniforms come into play is it eliminates the power and the overthinking and the creative burnout that you might have in deciding what should you wear. Now, that does not mean you have to completely eliminate all the other options and wear just like one thing every single day. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, when you know what your personal style is, you can kind of formulate that into a sort of uniform, which you know that every morning that I wake up, I can pick out these pieces without having to do a thought process. But when I think of this whole idea, I usually associate it with people who actually want to put their energy and their resources into more meaningful things. Now, don't get offended by it. What I mean by that is, a lot of people who are here and on top of the food chain, the 1% or whatever you want to call, they might be dressing and wearing like crazy rich clothes, but they don't really care about how they come across. They might be wearing the most basic things. The reason is because they do not want to put their power and brain energy into deciding what to wear. They would rather use that energy in doing the things that they actually love. And this is an actual theory behind it. For example, let me give you an example of all the big fashion houses in the world, luxury fashion houses. If you've seen the designers, barring a few designers, a lot of the designers these days have been wearing very basic fits. You know, towards the end of the fashion shows, when the designer comes and just says hi to everyone, Loewe, Maison Margiela. If you see those designers, they are dressed basic and they are dressed simple. They are the ones who are designing those exquisite pieces for all the clientele, but they do not dress like that. There is a reason for this. It's called probably the creative burnout. Creative burnout is an actual thing where they would rather spend that sort of creative energy in designing rather than deciding what to wear. A uniform sort of a setup help you save that energy? Yes, it does. Does having a uniform funnel your style much better rather than you dumping everything and buying XYZ number of things? Yes. Having a uniform helps you identify and be more consistent with your style. A personal style only becomes a personal style if you're consistent with it. If you're wearing a same thing for 10 years, people will start associating that particular thing with you. Consistency is the key. Why uniforms might not work to find out your personal style? Because you have too many options. We have another reason that personal style is dead, because there is no attachment to a subculture. For some people, yes, but for a lot of people, there's an attachment to an aesthetic rather than a subculture. For example, now before I get into it, I want to talk about what is a subculture. For example, you maybe relate to the 80s. Maybe you were born in the 80s, or maybe you are someone who's a biker. You have a bike, you have a Harley, you associate yourself with the biking community. Now, in the biking community, the kind of aesthetic that they deal with is leather jackets, ripped jeans, again leather boots, that kind of rough, tough, so toughy beard that they have. that is a subculture. If you are someone who's grown up listening to pop or rock music, you also understand how pop stars and rock stars dress. You might want to dress up like that. If you have an inclination towards subculture, maybe an indie sleaze or a hippie sort of a culture, or you've been exposed to that particular culture, you dressing like that could become your identity and a part of your personal style. Something flamboyant in terms of just being themselves, they risk a possibility of being accepted in terms of macro and societal norms. People who do risk wearing and standing out in terms of the clothes that they wear, someone who's not on trend and wears basic, they stand the risk of not being considered cool, aesthetic, and just considered being an outcast of sorts. One of the things that I saw the other day was there was a picture of Kendall and Kylie sitting by the basketball court, and Kendall was wearing a white tank. And guess what? That became a trend. People have been trying to find that exact same white tank top and calling it like oh, this is the perfect summer staple that you need to have. It's a white tank, for God's sake. Since when did white top become a trend? White top has always been a staple and a classic. That's what I'm trying to say. One thing that never goes out of trend is classics. Classics always make a comeback in some way, shape, or form. Leading to that comeback or turnaround time or churn, I want to talk about fast fashion and how fast fashion has ruined fashion, literally, quite literally. You know, when you watch a runway, the statement pieces that are actually worn by the models, they're not obviously mass produced. They're not mass produced or commercialized, and a lot of pieces cannot be just worn by themselves. Not a lot of clientele would prefer wearing directly pieces from runways. A lot of people do, but then there are some pieces which are just like as a creative outlet or sort of statement standalone piece describing a particular thought or a design or an idea. They're not meant to be worn off the runway, or they represent a cause. Earlier, back in the day when fast fashion was not a thing, any runway piece that had to be commercialized and be on a rack of Zara or an H&M, that would have taken, let's say, a decade to happen. But because of how advanced fast fashion is now, a piece that you see on a runway gets translated. According to the MD and the CEO of Shein, he said that a piece that you see on a runway can be translated and brought to the racks of H&M, Zara, Shein, etc. for any big fast fashion houses within a matter of months. Imagine that being a decade to months. So the turnaround time for any fashion or an aesthetic to survive is so small that every other month you come up with a new aesthetic, a new idea, a new, I don't know, whatever that is, a new silhouette or something that has got your attention. It just does not stand or have a meaning of its own anymore, and that is a scary place to be in. So this brings me to my closing remarks, and I want to leave you all with the questions. Are we really happy with ourselves? You want to look different as compared to other people, and still you want to be accepted by the society. So in the end, you just end up looking like a clone. And that is a question I want to leave everyone else with, as to why consumerism and fast fashion is basically the death of personal style. And I hope you guys like this video. I really want to talk more about this stuff because I really enjoy it, and I'm just always looking up new things in this space to talk about. So if you really like this video, do give this a thumbs up and like, and if you want to share it with people who you think will value this sort of content, please do so, and I will see you guys in the next video.